The first German shepherd broke formation before the final note of the bugle had faded. Atlas did not lunge. He did not bark. He simply slipped away from Captain Ryan Miller's left knee and crossed the memorial lawn with the steady purpose of a dog following a command no one else had heard. 6 other military K9s turned their heads. One by one, they left their handlers and followed him. Hundreds of people watched in stunned silence as the 7 dogs moved past the rows of folding chairs, past the flags, and past the cameras. They stopped around an old farmer standing alone beneath a cottonwood tree. The man's name was Ethan Whitmore. He was 72, broad-shouldered despite his age, with weathered hands and a faded denim jacket buttoned to the throat. He had spent most of the ceremony near the back, unnoticed by nearly everyone. But Atlas looked up at him as if he had found the only person who mattered. The dog pressed his nose against Ethan's chest. Beneath the denim, a metal tag clicked softly against a shirt button. Ethan's face lost its color. Then Atlas sat. The other 6 K9s formed a rough circle around the old man and sat with him at the center. Their ears stayed forward. Their breathing slowed. It was not a trick from the ceremony. It was a formation Captain Miller had never taught them. Ethan lifted one trembling hand, palm down. Every dog lowered its head. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Who is he?" Before we go further, tell us the city or state you are watching from, and share what loyalty means to you. If stories about courage, sacrifice, and the bond between people and K9s matter to you, subscribe and stay with us. Because what those 7 dogs remembered that morning had been hidden for 6 years, and the truth would change more than one life. Willow Creek, Montana, was the kind of town where people knew which truck belonged to which rancher and which porch light stayed on for a child coming home late. Yet almost no one knew much about Ethan Whitmore. They knew he owned 300 acres north of Raven Pass. They knew he fixed fences for elderly neighbors without sending a bill. They knew he bought feed in cash, attended church on Christmas Eve, and left before anyone could invite him to coffee. He had no photographs in the newspaper, no name on a committee, and no stories about the years before he came home to the farm. To most of Willow Creek, Ethan was simply the quiet widower with the old red pickup. Captain Ryan Miller knew less than most. At 38, Ryan commanded the K9 unit stationed at Fort Calder, 40 miles east of town. He had built his career on discipline. He trusted schedules, written procedures, and commands delivered once. Disorder made him uneasy, especially around working dogs. 6 years earlier, disorder had taken 7 handlers from his unit during a winter transport through Raven Pass. The K9s had survived. Atlas, Juno, Ranger, Echo, Sable, Duke, and Penny had been young then. They had been found cold, exhausted, and so traumatized that several military veterinarians believed they would never work again. Yet somehow, after 14 months at a rehabilitation annex whose records were mostly sealed, all 7 returned to service. Ryan had inherited the unit 2 years later. He knew every detail in their official files except the identity of the civilian specialist listed only as W. Now those same dogs sat around Ethan Whitmore as if the old farmer were the center of their world. Ryan approached slowly. He did not raise his voice. "Atlas, heel." Atlas looked at him, then back at Ethan. The hesitation lasted only a second, but for a dog trained to respond instantly, it felt enormous. Ethan lowered his hand. "Go on, boy." Atlas stood and returned to Ryan's side. The other 6 followed their handlers, though each looked back at the farmer before falling into position. Ryan stopped in front of Ethan. Up close, he saw that the metal tag beneath the jacket was not a farm token or a piece of jewelry. It was a military dog tag. "Sir," Ryan said, "how do you know that formation?" Ethan covered the tag with his hand. It was never meant for a parade. What was it meant for? A frightened dog that needed to know he was not alone. Ryan studied him. The answer came too quickly to be invented. Behind them, the memorial continued in fragments. Chairs scraped. Families murmured. The master of ceremonies tried to guide attention back to the stage, where 7 names were carved into a new black granite wall. One of those names belonged to Staff Sergeant Daniel Whitmore. Ryan looked from the wall to Ethan. "Whitmore," he said. "Daniel was your son." The old man's jaw tightened. Ryan had known Daniel. Not well, but enough to remember the easy grin, the stubborn confidence, and the way Atlas had watched him move across a room. Daniel had been 34 when the transport vehicle disappeared into the storm at Raven Pass. The recovery report said the crash killed all 7 handlers before rescue teams reached the site. Ethan had not attended the public funeral. That absence had become part of the story people told about him without knowing his name. Some said Daniel's father was too sick to travel. Others said the 2 men had not spoken for years. Ryan remembered being angry on Daniel's behalf. Now he saw Daniel's dog sitting 10 feet away, unable to stop watching the old farmer. "Why did you never come forward?" Ryan asked. Ethan looked at the granite wall. "This day belongs to them. It also belongs to the dogs who came back." "Yes. And they know you." Ethan's eyes moved toward Atlas. For a moment, the reserve left his face, revealing a grief so old it had settled into him like winter in the mountains. "They knew me once," he said. "That is not the same thing." He turned and walked toward the parking field. Atlas gave one low whine. The sound stopped Ethan for half a step, but he did not look back. That evening, Ryan remained at the unit kennels long after the other handlers had gone home. The 7 dogs had eaten, completed their health checks, and settled into their runs. Usually the building became quiet within minutes. That night, Atlas paced from gate to cot and back again. Ryan opened the run and sat on the concrete floor. "What did you see out there?" he murmured. Atlas came close and sniffed Ryan's hands. Then he moved to the far wall, sat, and lifted one paw. Ryan frowned. It was the same posture the dogs had taken around Ethan. A seated circle was not unusual in group obedience, but the lowered head and raised paw were not part of any current Fort Calder protocol. Ryan opened Atlas's archive training file on a tablet. Most of the early rehabilitation notes had been reduced to short entries. Subject resists enclosed spaces. Subject exhibits storm-triggered panic. Subject refuses food without visual contact with surviving pack. Week 9 introduced safe circle response. Ryan read the line twice. He searched the digital record for the phrase. Every result had been restricted. The authorization field showed only 3 words. Whitmore Rehabilitation Annex. The next morning, Ryan drove north before sunrise. Ethan's farm lay beyond a narrow county road where pavement surrendered to gravel. The house was smaller than Ryan expected, built of gray timber and set beneath tall pines. An old barn stood across the yard. Beyond it, pasture rolled toward the dark wall of Raven Pass. Ethan was repairing a gate when Ryan arrived. He did not look surprised. "You always visit people before breakfast?" Ethan asked. "Only when 7 military dogs ignore me for them." Ethan set down his wrench. "They did not ignore you. They delayed a command. They made a choice, then returned to duty. That is not the same thing." Ryan stepped closer. "The files call this place the Whitmore Rehabilitation Annex." A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "The files are sealed," Ryan continued. "Your name was removed from every report I can access. But the dogs remember you, and you knew a response no one in my unit has ever seen." Ethan glanced toward the barn. "You should leave it alone." "I cannot. I am responsible for them." "So was I." The words landed between them. Ryan waited. Ethan picked up the wrench again, but his hands no longer moved with confidence. After Raven Pass, the dogs were brought here because the military hospital had no place designed for 7 animals that had lost their handlers in the same night. They would not separate. Atlas would not enter a kennel. Juno attacked every metal door. Penny stopped eating whenever thunder rolled over the ridge. "You rehabilitated all 7. "I gave them room. Dr. Lena Ortiz handled the medicine. I handled the waiting. For 14 months. Ethan nodded. Ryan looked at the quiet fields. He imagined the 7 young shepherds running there, carrying fear no command could remove. Why was it secret? It was not secret at first. It became inconvenient later. To whom? Ethan's gaze hardened. "Captain, your dogs are healthy. They trust you. Let that be enough." It stopped being enough when Atlas recognized the father of his dead handler, and I realized no one had told me why. Ethan flinched at the word father. A truck turned into the drive behind them. Dr. Lena Ortiz climbed out carrying a veterinary case. She was in her late 50s, with silver threaded through her dark hair and the brisk manner of someone who had spent her life around people who confused urgency with panic. She looked from Ryan to Ethan. I wondered how long it would take. "You knew?" Ryan asked. "I treated the 7 when they came here." She set the case on the porch. "And I signed enough non-disclosure papers to wallpaper this house." Ethan shook his head. Lena. No. The dogs ended the silence yesterday. We can either explain it carefully or let rumors do the damage. Ryan faced her. What happened at Raven Pass? Lena looked toward the mountains. The official report says a transport lost control in a whiteout and went over an embankment. That part is true. It says every handler died on impact. That part is not. Ryan felt the morning narrow around him. Who survived? Daniel, Ethan said. His voice was barely audible. Ryan stared at him. For how long? Ethan's eyes stayed on the pass. Long enough to give me an order I have spent 6 years trying to obey. Ryan did not speak for several seconds. The wind pushed dry grass against the fence posts. Somewhere inside the barn, a horse shifted its weight. The recovery report listed no survivors, Ryan said. There were no survivors by the time the official team reached the wreck, Lena answered. But Ethan reached it first. Ethan closed his eyes as if the mountain had moved closer. The storm had arrived early that January. Weather stations warned that Raven Pass would close by late afternoon, but the K9 transport left Fort Calder after 3. 7 handlers, 7 dogs, 1 driver, and a trailer carrying new detection equipment for a demonstration the following morning. Daniel called his father before the convoy entered the pass. Ethan had not answered. They had argued 2 weeks earlier. Daniel planned to extend his service commitment. Ethan believed his son had already given enough. Daniel accused him of trying to control a life he no longer understood. Ethan told him not to come home until he could speak without turning every concern into an insult. It was the last full conversation they ever had. When the storm swallowed the road, Ethan was checking cattle near the north fence. He heard a distant impact that did not sound like thunder. Then his old farm dog, a black shepherd named Mara, began barking toward the ridge. Ethan followed her. The transport had broken through a guardrail and slid nearly 80 feet into a stand of pines. The cab was crushed against rock. The rear trailer had twisted sideways, trapping the handlers and dogs in separate compartments. Snow fell so hard that Ethan could barely see the vehicle from the top of the slope. He called emergency services, marked the location, and went down alone. I found the driver first, Ethan said. He was gone. 5 handlers were gone. 1 died while I was trying to reach him. Ryan swallowed. And Daniel? He was pinned behind the equipment rack. Conscious. Bleeding, but talking. Ethan's voice remained controlled, yet every word seemed to cost him. The dog compartments had buckled. 2 doors were jammed. 1 had torn open. Atlas had stayed beside Daniel's side of the wreck, clawing at metal until his pads split. The other K9s crowded together beneath the trailer, terrified by the wind and the grinding frame. Ethan could not free his son without lifting equipment. He could free the dogs before the wreck shifted farther down the slope. Daniel understood before Ethan said it. He told me to get them out. Ethan continued. I told him rescue was coming. He said the trailer would not wait. Ryan knew Daniel's voice well enough to hear the command in his imagination. What did you do? What he asked. Ethan crawled through a broken service panel, cut 2 straps, and opened the compartments from inside. The first dog bolted into the storm. The second tried to bite him. Atlas refused to move until Daniel spoke through the wall. Take them home, Dad. Those were the words Ethan heard clearly. He led the 7 dogs to an abandoned maintenance shed below the road. Mara kept them together while he returned to the wreck. By then the slope had shifted. A tree had fallen across the access point. Ethan could hear Daniel, but he could no longer see him. For nearly 4 hours, father and son spoke through twisted metal while the storm buried the road above them. Daniel asked about the farm. He apologized for the argument. Ethan apologized for every year he had mistaken fear for wisdom. Daniel told him there was a recorder in Atlas's harness and made him promise to keep it safe. Then Daniel's voice weakened. He asked me if Atlas was warm. Ethan said. Ryan looked away. I told him yes. That was the last thing he heard from me. The official rescue teams arrived after dawn, but unstable snow delayed their descent. By the time they reached Daniel, he was gone. Ethan was found in the shed with 7 K9s pressed around him and Mara lying across the doorway against the wind. Lena had met them at the field hospital. The dogs were alive because Ethan kept them moving, shared his coat, and melted snow in a dented feed pan, she said. But they were not ready to return to a kennel. Every metal sound sent them into panic. Separating them made it worse. So we brought them here. Ryan looked at Ethan's farm with new eyes. The barn was not just a barn. The fields were not merely pasture. They had been part of the recovery of 7 animals who had lost everything familiar in one night. "Why erase your name?" he asked. Ethan's mouth tightened. "Ask Adrian Cole." Major Adrian Cole had commanded Fort Calder's working dog program at the time of the crash. He was retired now and served as chairman of the Raven Pass Memorial Foundation. Ryan had shaken his hand at the ceremony. Cole had spoken about duty, sacrifice, and the importance of preserving the truth. "The transport should never have been on that road," Lena said. "The weather warning was active. The demonstration could have waited." Cole ordered them through. He approved the departure. Ryan's training urged caution. A delayed convoy could have involved many decisions. An approved route was not proof of negligence. Why would he conceal Ethan's role? "Because Ethan found more than the dogs," Lena said. Ethan turned toward her. "That is enough." "No," Ryan said. "It is not." The old farmer stared at the mountains for a long moment. Then he walked to the barn and unlocked a side door. Inside, dust hung in beams of morning light. Saddles lined one wall. Feed bins stood near the back. Ethan crossed to a cabinet secured with 2 steel latches. He opened it and removed a worn leather K9 harness. Daniel's name had been stamped into the inside strap. Ryan reached toward it, then stopped. A small black recorder was fitted beneath the chest plate. Its casing was cracked. One corner had been burned. "Daniel activated it before the crash," Ethan said. "He told me it contained something important." Cole's investigators took it, then returned it 3 months later. They said the memory was destroyed. "Did you have it tested?" "Twice. Technology was not good enough then. And now?" Ethan looked at the recorder. "Now I have spent 6 years wondering whether opening it would give me my son's voice or take away the only version of that night I can survive." Ryan understood the fear, but another feeling rose beside it. Anger. "You withheld evidence. I preserved what they gave back. You knew the report was false. I knew the report was incomplete. Families built their lives around that report." Ethan's eyes flashed. "Do not speak to me as if I forgot the families." "Then why let Cole stand at a memorial and tell everyone the truth had been honored?" "Because exposing one man would not bring 7 handlers home. It might stop the next man from making the same choice." The barn became silent. Lena stepped between them. "Ryan, grief is not a courtroom." Ethan had just buried his son. Cole told him that challenging the report could delay survivor benefits, close the K9 program, and turn Daniel's final mission into a political fight. That was pressure, not informed consent. Ethan looked down at the harness. "I signed the statement." "Because you were broken," Lena said. "Because I made a choice." Ryan knew something about choices made under pressure. He also knew how easily a commander could call fear responsibility. Still, he could not accept that 7 families had been denied the full story. "I want the recorder analyzed," he said. "It belongs to Ethan," Lena replied. "It belonged to Daniel." Ethan lifted his gaze. "Daniel has a widow." Ryan knew Rachel Whitmore lived in Bozeman with her 13-year-old daughter, Emma. Rachel had attended every Raven Pass memorial except this one. According to the foundation, she declined because the event had become too public. "She deserves to decide," Ryan said. Ethan flinched again, but this time he did not argue. Rachel arrived at the farm 2 days later. She drove a dark blue sport utility vehicle and parked beside the porch without turning off the engine. Emma sat in the passenger seat, looking toward the barn with cautious curiosity. Rachel stepped out alone. At 43, she carried herself with the composure of someone who had learned how to function while angry. Daniel's death had left her with bills, condolence letters, and a child who still woke during snowstorms. Ethan's disappearance afterward had left another wound no ceremony could name. "You had his recorder," she said before reaching the porch. Ethan stood with both hands at his sides. "Yes. For 6 years. Yes. And you never told me. I was told it was destroyed." "That is not what I asked." Ethan's gaze dropped. Rachel laughed once, without humor. "You missed the funeral. You did not answer my calls. You sent money through a lawyer like we were strangers. And all this time you kept the last thing he touched in a locked cabinet. I did not know how to bring it to you. You drove 7 traumatized military dogs through recovery, but you could not drive 90 miles to see your granddaughter?" The words struck harder than Ryan expected. Emma looked through the windshield, pretending not to listen. Ethan's voice roughened. No, Rachel's anger paused. He did not defend himself. He did not claim noble reasons. He simply stood before her as an old man admitting a failure he could not repair with explanation. I thought Daniel died believing I chose the dogs over him, Ethan said. Every time I looked at Emma, I saw the life he would not have. Every time I looked at you, I heard the promise I could not keep. I convinced myself staying away would spare you my guilt. It did not spare us anything. I know that now. Rachel turned toward the vehicle. Emma had opened the passenger door. She stepped out wearing a green jacket and Daniel's old baseball cap. Is Atlas here? She asked. Ryan had brought Atlas in a unit vehicle, believing the dog's presence might help. He opened the rear door. Atlas jumped down, saw Emma, and stopped. The girl did not rush him. She crouched several feet away and held one hand low, exactly as her father had taught her when she was small. Atlas approached slowly. He sniffed the cap, then pressed his forehead against her shoulder. Emma closed her eyes. Rachel covered her mouth. Ethan stood frozen on the porch while the dog connected 3 generations without asking any of them to forgive too quickly. After a minute, Emma looked at her grandfather. Did my dad tell you to save Atlas? Ethan nodded. Then why do you think he blamed you? The question was simple enough to come only from a child and deep enough that none of the adults could answer. That afternoon, Rachel agreed to let Ryan take the recorder to a military forensics lab. She made one condition. No one hears it before family. Ryan promised. As he carried the harness toward his vehicle, Atlas followed and placed his nose against the cracked recorder. His ears shifted forward. Then he moved to the barn's east wall and scratched once at the floor. Ethan noticed. What is it? Ryan asked. Nothing. Atlas scratched again. Ethan's face changed. During rehabilitation, the east wall had been the dog's safe place during storms. Ethan had built a low room behind it, insulated from thunder and metal noise. He had sealed it after the program closed. They moved a feed cabinet and found the old door. Inside were 7 faded sleeping mats arranged in a circle. Wooden nameplates hung above them. Atlas, Juno, Ranger, Echo, Sable, Duke, Penny. Emma entered behind the adults. On the far wall, written in black marker, were 4 words. No one heals alone. Beneath the words sat a rusted metal box. Atlas went directly to it and lay down. Ethan stared at the box as if he had forgotten it existed. Inside were rehabilitation logs, photographs, and a sealed envelope in Daniel's handwriting. Dad, for when the dogs come home. Ethan did not open the envelope. He carried it to the farmhouse and placed it on the kitchen table beside the cracked recorder. Rachel sat across from him. Emma stayed near the door with Atlas at her feet. Ryan and Lena waited by the window, close enough to help and far enough to understand that the moment did not belong to them. The envelope had been written before the Raven Pass crash. Daniel had left it in the safe room during a visit to the farm. When he and Ethan were still discussing a future neither man knew how to describe without arguing. Ethan broke the seal. Daniel's handwriting leaned slightly to the right, hurried but clear. Dad, if you found this because the dogs finally came home, then I hope you kept the East Room ready. You were right about one thing. We ask too much from working dogs and too little from ourselves after their service ends. I want to help you turn the farm into a place where handlers and dogs can learn how to trust life again. I know we disagree about how long I should stay in. I also know your anger is fear wearing work boots. Mine probably is too. Let us stop wasting time. When this rotation is over, we start together. Ethan lowered the paper. Rachel looked toward the ceiling, tears slipping down her face. Emma rested one hand on Atlas's back. He was coming home, Ethan whispered. He was trying to, Rachel said. For years, Ethan had remembered only the argument. Daniel's final phone call had become evidence of a broken relationship. The letter did not erase that pain, but it changed its shape. His son had not closed the door. Ethan had simply never found the courage to look for the key. The forensics lab recovered the recorder 3 weeks later. Ryan called the family to Fort Calder, where they gathered in a small briefing room. Major Adrian Cole arrived without being invited. He was 62 now, tall and carefully composed, with white hair cut close and a dark suit that fit him like a uniform. He had spent the years since retirement raising money for K9 programs and speaking at memorials. Many families respected him. Some credited him with preserving benefits after the Raven Pass disaster. When he saw Ethan, his expression tightened. You should have left that device where it was, Cole said. Ethan stood. You told me it was empty. At the time, every specialist agreed. You also told me the convoy left before the weather closure. Cole glanced at Ryan. This is not the place. It is exactly the place, Rachel said. The technician started the recording. At first there was only static, engine vibration, and the faint jingle of collars. Then Daniel's voice filled the room. Route marker 12. Snow increasing. Visibility less than 200 feet. Requesting permission to turn back. Another voice answered over the radio. The signal broke apart, but several words remained clear. Continue to Raven Station. Donors already in place. Demonstration must proceed. Ryan looked at Cole. The recording continued. Daniel spoke with the other handlers. They discussed ice on the road and a warning light on the trailer's braking system. One handler suggested stopping. Daniel agreed. Then a second transmission came through. You are less than 8 miles out. Continue with caution. The impact arrived as a roar of metal and broken glass. Emma covered her ears. Rachel reached for her, but the technician paused the recording before the worst of the noise. There is more, he said. The device continued intermittently for 5 hours. They listened only to the sections containing Daniel's voice. They heard him call for Atlas. They heard Ethan arrive. They heard father and son argue through the wreck. I am not leaving you. You are not leaving me. You are taking my partner somewhere safe. There was a long stretch of wind. Then Daniel spoke again, weaker now. Dad, listen. The east culvert below the station is reinforced. If the slope moves, use it. The dogs know the marker scent. Alice can find it. Ethan's recorded. Voice answered, rescue is coming. Daniel said, I know. Tell Rachel I was trying to get home. Tell Emma her dad kept the blue stone she gave him. It is in Atlas's vest. Another gap. Then, with effort, Daniel added, do not let this place become another wall with names. Make it useful. Build the center. Give them somewhere to come back to. The final clear sound was Ethan telling him Atlas was warm. No one moved when the recording ended. Cole stood near the door, his face stripped of ceremony. Ryan turned to him. You ordered them forward. I authorized continuation based on the information I had. You heard the weather report. I also had a federal delegation waiting at Raven Station. Funding for the entire regional K9 program depended on that demonstration. So you risked 14 lives. Cole's control broke. I believe they could make 8 miles. That belief killed 7 handlers. It has punished me every day since. Rachel rose. Punishment is not the same as accountability. Cole looked at her, and for the first time he seemed older than Ethan. The program was weeks from losing half its budget. Those dogs protected soldiers, airports, schools, and communities. I thought one difficult drive would secure years of work. After the crash, investigators told me a public fight over command pressure could freeze benefits and close the unit. I chose to protect what remained. You chose the story that protected you, Ryan said. Cole did not deny it. Ethan had imagined this confrontation for years. In those imagined scenes, anger gave him strength. He accused Cole. He demanded confession. He forced the world to acknowledge what Daniel had endured. Now, looking at the man, Ethan felt no victory. Cole had not made the choice because he hated the handlers or saw the dogs as disposable. He had made it because he believed the mission justified one more risk. Then he had repeated that mistake by believing the program justified one more lie. You taught everyone under you that duty meant continuing, Ethan said. Daniel's last order was to turn back toward life. You never understood the difference. Cole lowered his head. Ryan wanted the recording released. Immediately, Rachel wanted an independent investigation. Lena wanted the dog's rehabilitation records unsealed so the full cost of the disaster could be understood. Cole asked for 48 hours to notify the other families before the news reached the press. Ethan surprised everyone by agreeing. Truth should not arrive at their doors through a television, he said. The families gathered at the farm 2 days later. Some shouted. Some wept. One man left before the recording finished. A mother named June Parker sat in the safe room beneath her daughter's old K9 photograph and held Penny's face between both hands. Thank you for bringing one of them home, she told Ethan. He had no answer that felt large enough, so he knelt beside her and remained there. The investigation began the following week. Cole resigned from the Memorial Foundation and turned over private correspondence showing that he had pressured the convoy to continue. He did not ask for sympathy. He did not excuse the order. He accepted that his fear of losing the program had caused him to value the institution above the people serving it. Willow Creek changed quickly after that. Reporters parked outside Ethan's gate. Neighbors brought food he did not need. Strangers called him a hero. Ethan disliked the word more each time he heard it. Atlas and the other 6 K9s were temporarily moved to the farm to avoid the noise at Fort Calder. Though older now, they remembered the fields. Juno ran directly to the pond. Ranger found the shade beneath the west fence. Penny entered the barn and lay beside her old nameplate. Atlas stayed near Ethan. Ryan visited every day. At first, their conversations were short and practical. Feed schedules, joint stiffness, Sable's sensitivity to the camera drones hovering beyond the property. Gradually, they spoke about larger things. Ryan admitted he feared making a command decision he could not take back. Since Raven Pass, he had treated procedure as protection against failure. Ethan told him procedures mattered, but a leader who stopped listening to the living beings in front of him could still follow every rule and lose the reason the rules existed. You let them choose at the memorial, Ryan said. I trusted what they were telling me. I thought obedience was the proof of trust. Sometimes it is. Sometimes trust is the reason a good partner warns you before obeying. Emma spent weekends at the farm. Rachel did not forgive Ethan all at once, and he did not ask her to. He made breakfast, drove Emma to the feed store, and listened when Rachel spoke about the years he had missed. He apologized without adding explanations. That mattered more than any promise. Emma found the blue stone in a small pocket of Atlas's original vest. She had painted it when she was 6 and given it to Daniel for luck. The paint had faded, but a crooked yellow star remained. She placed it on the windowsill in the safe room. Dad wanted this place built, she said. Ethan looked around at the old mats and worn walls. He did. Are you going to do it? I am 72. That was not my question. He smiled despite himself. The Raven Pass Foundation voted to convert the abandoned maintenance station near the memorial into a small education wing connected to a new K9 recovery center. The farm would provide the open training grounds. Fort Calder would supply staff. The families asked that the center carry all 7 handlers' names, not Ethan's. Ethan agreed on one condition. The safe room would be rebuilt exactly as it had been, with a circle large enough for dogs and people to sit together. Construction began in late summer. The old station stood half a mile above the memorial lawn, built into the base of Raven Pass. Its concrete walls had survived 50 winters. Engineers declared the main structure sound, though Ethan worried about the east side, where an old drainage culvert ran beneath the slope. He walked the area with Atlas and Ryan after a week of heavy rain. Atlas stopped near a newly poured retaining wall. He sniffed the ground, moved 10 feet uphill, and pawed at wet soil. Ryan examined the spot. Could be a rodent. Ethan crouched. Cold air rose from a narrow crack. The culvert is open underneath, he said. The plans show it was filled 20 years ago. The plans are wrong. Ryan called the site engineer, who promised a survey before the dedication ceremony. The next morning, Cole appeared at the farm. He looked tired and thinner. The investigation had made him a public symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Some people wanted him prosecuted. Others defended his years of service. Cole seemed to have stopped defending himself. The foundation asked me to stay away from the dedication, he said. Ethan continued repairing a stall door. That is probably wise. I came because you filed a safety concern. The east culvert is carrying air. Water is moving somewhere under the new wall. Cole looked toward the pass. The engineering firm reviewed it. So did Atlas. A faint, bitter smile touched Cole's face. You trust a dog over a stamped report. I trust both until one tells me the other missed something. Cole had spent a career resisting statements like that. This time he nodded. He contacted an old Army survey team and arranged a ground scan. The earliest available appointment was the morning after the dedication. Ryan wanted to postpone the event. The foundation refused. Hundreds of guests were traveling, including families who had waited 6 years for the new center. The forecast showed scattered rain, but no severe weather. Ethan said he would not attend unless the east wing remained closed. The foundation agreed. On the morning of the dedication, thunder rolled over Raven Pass before sunrise. By 8 o'clock, the rain had settled into a steady gray curtain. The Memorial Foundation considered moving the dedication into the community hall, but buses were already arriving. Families carried umbrellas between the parking field and a large tent on the lawn. Veterans in dress uniforms stood beneath the covered walkway. The 7 K9s waited with their handlers inside the old station's main room, where photographs of the fallen lined the walls. Ethan arrived only because Emma asked him to. She wore Daniel's baseball cap and carried the blue stone in her pocket. Rachel walked beside her, watching the dark ridge with visible unease. "You said the east wing is closed," Rachel reminded Ryan. "It is locked and marked. No one is going near it." Atlas emerged from the station and pulled toward Ethan. Ryan released him. The dog crossed the wet pavement, stopped in front of Ethan, and shook rain from his coat. "You feel it too, do you?" Ethan murmured. Atlas turned his head toward the retaining wall. The ceremony began under the tent. A chaplain spoke first. Then June Parker read the names of the 7 handlers. No speeches called them fearless. No one claimed they had never doubted. Their families had asked for the truth, so the stories described them as they had been. Funny, impatient, devoted, imperfect, and brave when bravery cost something. Rachel stepped to the microphone with Emma. "Daniel believed coming home was part of service," she said. "This center will exist, so working dogs and their people do not have to pretend they are unbroken before they are welcomed back." Applause rose softly beneath the rain. Ethan stood at the edge of the tent with the dogs nearby. He should have felt peace. Instead, he noticed Atlas lifting his nose again and again. Juno paced. Sable stared toward the station door. Penny gave a short alert bark. Ryan saw it too. He signaled the handlers to move the dogs away from the crowd. At that moment, a deep sound rolled beneath the lawn. It was not thunder. It came from the earth. The pavement near the east retaining wall dropped several inches. Water burst through a seam and rushed toward the station. People shouted. The lights inside the building flickered. Ryan took the microphone. Everyone moved to the parking field. "Stay together. Do not run." Handlers guided the crowd uphill. The K9s remained controlled, but all 7 pulled toward the station. Emma looked around. "Where is Mrs. Parker?" June Parker had gone inside minutes earlier to retrieve a photograph of her daughter. So had 2 students from the school volunteer group and a maintenance worker. Ryan radioed the fire department and ordered the main room cleared. Before he could reach the door, part of the covered walkway sagged. Concrete cracked along the east wall. Mud and water poured across the entrance. Cole appeared from behind the station carrying a rolled survey map. He had come despite the Foundation's request because he could not ignore Ethan's warning. "The culvert is not filled," he said. "It runs beneath the east wing and exits below the old Ranger Road. The scan team called me from Helena. The new wall redirected water into it." Another tremor passed under their feet. "Can it hold?" Ryan asked. Cole looked at the collapsing pavement. "Not for long." A child's voice echoed faintly from inside the station. Rachel grabbed Ryan's arm. Emma was beside me. They turned. She was no longer there. Atlas barked once and lunged toward the blocked entrance. Ethan's heart stopped. He saw the blue stone lying in the mud near the door. Emma had gone after June. For 6 years, Ethan had lived inside the moment when Daniel told him to save the dogs. Now the same mountain had taken his granddaughter beyond a wall he could not safely cross. Ryan called her name. A faint answer came from below, not from the main room. The floor opened. Emma shouted. "We are in a tunnel. The east culvert." Ethan moved toward the retaining wall. Ryan caught his arm. "The rescue team is 5 minutes out. The main entrance will not last 5 minutes. You do not know the tunnel is open. Atlas does." The dog pulled toward a narrow path descending behind the memorial. The other 6 K9s strained after him. Cole unrolled the old map against the hood of a truck. "There should be an access grate 200 yards downhill, if it is not buried." Ethan looked at Ryan. Daniel said the dogs knew the marker scent. Ryan understood. During the original crash, emergency scent markers had been stored in the culvert. Traces might remain in the dry concrete, too faint for people, but meaningful to dogs trained there years ago. He assigned Juno and Sable to search the outer slope with their handlers. Ranger and Echo began checking the main room from a safer west entrance. Duke and Penny worked the crowd to ensure no one else was missing. Atlas stayed with Ethan. They found the access grate beneath 6 inches of mud and pine needles. Cole and Ryan pulled it open. Cold air rushed out carrying the smell of wet concrete. The tunnel was barely 4 feet high. "I am going first," Ryan said. Atlas refused the opening. He looked at Ethan. Ethan knew that look. The dog was not afraid of the tunnel alone. He was remembering metal, darkness, and the night he lost Daniel. Forcing him might get obedience for a few yards. It would not get trust through a collapsing passage. Ethan knelt in the rain. He placed his palm beneath Atlas's chin and waited until the dog's eyes met his. "No one heals alone," he said. Atlas's ears moved forward. Ethan lowered himself into the culvert. Atlas followed. Ryan entered behind them, then Cole. The retired major had no authority to be there, but he carried the old map and knew the station's original structure better than anyone. Ryan started to object. Cole shook his head. "I sent them into this pass once. I am not standing outside again." They crawled through cold water while the storm hammered the slope above. Atlas moved ahead, stopped at each junction, and tested the air. Twice he chose passages not shown on Cole's map. Old repairs had changed the route. After 70 yards, they heard crying. "Emma!" Ethan called. "I am here." The tunnel opened into a maintenance chamber beneath the east wing. Emma sat beside June Parker and one of the students. The maintenance worker supported the second student, whose ankle had been hurt in the fall. Water rose around their knees. A steel service door had bent across the chamber's main exit. Emma saw Atlas first. "I knew he would find us." The dog moved to her, sniffed her from head to toe, then checked each trapped person as he had been trained to do. When he reached June, he pressed close until her shaking eased. Ethan crawled into the chamber and pulled Emma against him. For 1 second, he held her too tightly. "I am sorry," she whispered. Mrs. Parker went back for the picture. "You came back for her. She should not have been alone." Ethan looked at Daniel's daughter and felt grief and pride strike the same place in his chest. Ryan assessed the damaged door. "We cannot take the injured student through the crawl space safely. We need to open this." Cole studied the frame. "Manual release is on the other side." Atlas sniffed along the bottom edge, then pawed near a narrow gap. Ethan removed the leather belt from his coat and looped it through the opening. Ryan used a broken pipe as leverage. The door moved less than an inch. Above them, concrete groaned. Water surged into the chamber, knocking the map from Cole's hand. He caught the bent door and braced his shoulder against it. "Again," he said. Ryan pulled. Ethan pushed the pipe. The door rose enough for Atlas to slide beneath. The dog disappeared into darkness. For several seconds, there was only water and strained metal. Then a latch snapped. Atlas had struck the release bar with his body. The door lifted. Ryan and the maintenance worker carried the injured student through. Ethan guided June and the others. Cole remained at the door, holding the damaged track steady while debris fell from the ceiling. "Move!" Ryan shouted. Cole waited until Emma cleared the frame. The door twisted and dropped behind him as he rolled through. The Western Service stairs led toward the station's main room, but mud blocked the upper landing. Echo barked from the other side. His handler answered. The K9 had found their location through the wall. Ryan radioed the rescue teams and gave precise coordinates. Firefighters opened the west panel from outside. Minutes later, daylight cut through the dust and rain. The crowd in the parking field cheered when the first student emerged. June came next, clutching her daughter's photograph beneath her coat. Emma climbed out with Atlas beside her. Rachel ran to them. Ethan followed more slowly. When his boots reached open ground, his knees gave way. He sat in the mud, breathing hard. Atlas turned back, returned to him, and pressed his body against Ethan's chest. One by one, the other 6 K9s came from their search positions. They formed the same circle they had made at the memorial. This time, everyone understood. It was not a salute to fame. It was not a performance. It was the safe circle Ethan had created when 7 frightened dogs needed to feel that danger had an edge and trust had a center. Ryan knelt beside him. Rachel held Emma. June stood beneath an emergency blanket with the rescued photograph against her heart. Cole remained near the station, soaked and exhausted, watching the dogs surround the man whose warning he had nearly allowed others to dismiss. The east wing collapsed 20 minutes later. No one was inside. The investigation into the Raven Pass disaster expanded to include the construction failure. The engineering company had relied on incomplete military plans. The Foundation had rushed the dedication rather than wait 1 day for the ground scan. Responsibility did not belong to one person alone, and that became part of the lesson Willow Creek refused to hide. Cole testified publicly about both failures. He described the pressure he placed on Daniel's convoy and the pressure he later placed on investigators to protect the K9 program. He lost honors that had once defined him. He also spent the next year working without title or salary to help rebuild the center safely. Some families never forgave him. Ethan did not ask them to. Forgiveness, he learned, could not be demanded in the name of healing. Accountability had to come first, and even then, some wounds remained. Cole accepted that. It was the first honest order he had followed in years. The new recovery center was not built into Raven Pass. It was built on Ethan's farm. The barn was reinforced, the east safe room restored, and a veterinary wing added beside the pasture. The center was named Homeline, after Daniel's final wish that service include a way back. The entrance carried the names of the 7 fallen handlers and a simple sentence from the old wall. No one heals alone. Ethan refused a statue. He accepted a wooden bench. Rachel and Emma came every weekend during construction. The first months were awkward. There were silences no apology could fill. Ethan learned not to rush them. Rachel learned that his distance had come from shame, not lack of love, though understanding did not erase the years. Emma made progress easier by refusing to treat pain as a reason to stop asking questions. She wanted to know what Daniel ate before missions, whether he sang badly, and why Atlas turned in 3 circles before lying down. Ethan answered everything he could. When he did not know, they asked Ryan. Together, they rebuilt Daniel from more than the manner of his death. Atlas retired the following spring. His hips had begun to stiffen, and the tunnel rescue made Ryan accept what affection had encouraged him to postpone. At a small ceremony on the farm, Ryan removed Atlas's working collar and handed the leash to Emma. She looked at Ethan. "Can he stay with us?" Ethan crouched beside the old shepherd. Atlas's muzzle had gone gray, but his eyes remained clear. "He already came home," Ethan said. The other 6 K9s continued in lighter duties. Some worked demonstrations. Some helped young handlers learn. Penny became especially good with veterans who found crowded rooms difficult. Juno assisted Lena during rehabilitation sessions, calmly showing nervous dogs how to enter the safe room. Ranger, who had once panicked at every metal door, learned to rest beside one without watching it. Ryan changed too. He still respected procedure, but he taught his handlers to observe before correcting. During training, he asked them what their dogs were communicating, not only whether they obeyed. He told the story of Raven Pass without removing failure from it. The dead deserved more than polished myths. The living deserved lessons strong enough to prevent repetition. Ethan never returned to the background. He still avoided cameras when he could. He still wore the same denim jacket and drove the same red pickup. But 3 mornings a week, he met young handlers in the pasture. He taught them to reward patience, to recognize fear before it became resistance, and to understand that a working dog could be brave and wounded at the same time. He never called himself a trainer during those sessions. "I am still learning," he said. On the first anniversary of Homeline, the community gathered beside the rebuilt barn. There were no grand speeches. Families planted 7 cottonwood trees along the fence. Children painted stones for the garden. Each K9 carried a small ribbon bearing a handler's name. Ethan stood beneath the oldest tree with Atlas beside him. The 6 other shepherds saw him from across the field. They left their handlers only after Ryan gave a quiet release command. Then they crossed the grass and settled around Ethan in a familiar circle. Emma sat beside her grandfather. Rachel stood behind them, with one hand on Ethan's shoulder. Atlas rested his head across Ethan's boot, directly over the place where Daniel's dog tag hung beneath the denim jacket. Ethan looked toward the mountains. For years, he had believed loyalty meant carrying pain without burdening anyone else. The dogs had taught him something different. Loyalty was not silence. It was staying close enough to answer when the truth finally called. It was returning for the frightened. It was making room for the broken. It was trusting that love could survive an unfinished goodbye. The bugle played as the sun lowered over Willow Creek. This time, when the final note faded, no dog broke formation. There was no need. They were already home. If Ethan and Atlas's journey touched your heart, share the moment you will remember most, and tell us what loyalty means in your life. Subscribe for more stories about K9 courage, second chances, and the bonds that refuse to disappear. Because sometimes the ones who lead us out of the darkest places do not speak at all. They simply stay beside us until we are ready to find the way home.